Okay, we're going to attempt to finish Hamlet today. I don't know how, but we'll see what happens. So we're picking up with Hamlet Act 1, Scene 3, around line 50. Polonius has just given his famous advice to his son Laertes, and now he's going to question his daughter, okay, Ophelia, about her friendship / relationship with Hamlet, okay, and he asks Ophelia, line 50, "What is it, Ophelia, he hath said to you? So please you, something touching the Lord Hamlet. Very well, bethought he, 'tis told me he hath very oft of late given private time to you, and you yourself have of your audience been most free and bounteous." Now, I think Kenneth Braddock, for example, interprets that to mean that she has been of her body most free and bountiful to Hamlet. But that's not what the text says, okay? We're told when he says, "If it be so," that is, if you've been free with your time with Hamlet, "'tis put on me, and that in way of caution, I must tell you, you do not understand yourself so clearly as it behooves my daughter and your honor." Why my daughter? What is his rank in Danish society? Put it in the context of today. And Claudius is the president. What's Polonius's job? Essentially. He'd be like chief of staff. He'd be the one sending out, the courtiers and all that kind of stuff. So, tell me, what's between you? He asks Ophelia. "He hath, my lord, of late made many tenders of his affection to me." He hath made many tenders of his affection. Tenders, gifts, or indications. Affection, you speak like a green girl. Now, you could take that to mean that he's suggesting his daughter's been around the block a few times. Has she? Or is Ophelia a green girl? Is Ophelia innocent? It's a pretty important question in terms of how you then understand some of what happens later on in the play. Unsifted in such perilous circumstance. Why is it perilous? Perilous for whom? It's perilous for Ophelia, possibly. Okay. Do you believe his tenders, as you call them? Tenders today would be notes, cards, flowers, candy, email, texts, and not crass ones. Not, "Ooh, baby, I want to do you in the car, in the parking lot, behind the bleachers," What used to be called courting, okay? "I do not know, my lord, what I should think." And this line gets to the heart of what some critics, at least, have seen as a problem with Ophelia. She seemingly doesn't have a brain, okay? Some critics, more so back in the 70s than today, said, it's fitting that Ophelia's name begins with that letter. Louder, Anna.
The womb shape.
Okay, that possibly. What else? It's hollow. It's a zero. I don't know what to think. I'm just an airhead. Okay? It's not quite fair. It's not quite fair to her. So, she says, "I don't know what to think." That opens the door for dear old dad to tell her what to think. Compare, and this will be a great paper, by the way, compare Ophelia with Hermia. Does Hermia know what to think? Does Hermia have an attitude? Does she have an opinion? Yes. She doesn't want to marry the man her father wants her to marry. She wants to marry the man she wants to marry. And she essentially says, if you love him so much, you marry him. Okay? So, I will teach you. Think yourself a baby. Think yourself a baby that hath tanned these tenders for true pay, which are not sterling. Now put that in modern language. What does he mean, these tenders are not sterling?
They're not sincere.
They're not sincere? Okay, what kind of language is that? They're not sterling. What other word do we use right next to sterling? Silver. What's the difference between sterling silver and plated silver?
Plated tarnishes the sterling silver.
Well, then isn't the pound is known as the sterling pound?
It is now. It wasn't necessarily in Shakespeare's day. Okay? But it means it's not real. In other words, the tenders he is suggesting that Hamlet is offering are counterfeit. They're false. Okay? Tender yourself more dearly, or you'll tender me a fool. That is, I will become a fool. Who? To whom? To the whole courtly community. So she says, my lord, he hath importuned me with love in honorable fashion. So, I think that's a line that indicates Hamlet and Ophelia have not slept together. Hamlet is honorable towards her. Okay? Fashion, you may call it. Go to. And he's given countenance to his speech, my lord, with almost all the holy vows of heaven. Yeah, but what do we know about countenance from Hamlet's speech to his mother at the beginning of the play? His nightly clothes, his downcast visage, his sighs, his tears. These are what? But the suits and trappings of woe. In other words, you can act that. You can act all the holy vows of heaven. You can pretend to be in love. So, Polonius, springs to catch woodcocks. In other words, Ophelia, those are just, what's the word we want? Traps. Those are just traps. I do know when the blood burns, how prodigal the soul lends the tongue vows. Okay, when the blood burns, in other words, when you're passionate, okay, a word more in vogue today than passionate, horny. When your hormones are raging, what happens? The soul is prodigal. That is, it leaves its rightful place, and it lends the tongue vows.
You'll say anything.
You'll say anything to get what you want. These blazes, daughter, giving more light than heat, extinct in both, even in their promise, as it is a making. Go back to Sonnet 129. You don't have to turn to it. The expense of spirit and a waste of shame is lust in action. Until action, lust is perjured, murderous, bloody, full of blame, savage, extreme, rude, cruel, not to trust, enjoyed no sooner, but despised straight. Past reason hunted, no sooner had, past reason hated. As a swallowed bait on purpose laid to make the taker mad. Mad in pursuit and in possession. So had having an inquest to have extreme. A bliss in proof, improved a very woe. Before a joy proposed. All of Hamlet's loving vows. Behind a dream. Okay? Giving more light than heat, extinct in both. That is, if his love is fulfilled, the light and heat will die. She'll become what? A notch. A notch on his belt, or on his bedstead, or on whatever. Okay? So, he says, you must not take for fire his promises. No. Here's why. Set your entreatments at a higher rate than a command to parle. For Lord Hamlet believes so much in him, he's young, and with a larger tether may he walk than may be given you. Does this mean she's older than he is? No. Why does he have a larger tether?
He's a guy and he's a prince.
He's a guy. The double standard is real. And he's a prince, as Paul said. Okay? Men didn't have to, quote unquote, prove their virginity at marriage in the Elizabethan period. Women did. So, do not believe his vows, Ophelia, for they are brokers. What is a broker? What's a stockbroker do? He's a middleman. He's an in-between. Okay? These vows are nothing but go-betweens to get Hamlet what he wants. Not of that die which their investments show. Okay, notice that. Shakespeare is using the language of the stock market, their investments, but mere implorators of unholy suits. So, he tells her, in plain terms, from this time forth, I would not have you so slander any moment leisure as to give words or talk with the Lord Hamlet. He has forbidden her to even talk with Hamlet from this moment forth. I shall obey. Good daughter, not Hermia. Okay? So Act 1, Scene 4. Hamlet, Horatio, Marcellus come in. They hear the trumpets go off. Hamlet talks about what the king is doing tonight. And says, the kettle drum and trumpet thus bray out the triumph of his pledge. Horatio, is this a custom? Aye, marry it is. But to my mind, though I am native here and to the manor born, it is a custom more honored in the breach than in the observance. I've got a book in my office called The Miracle of Language by a guy named Richard Lederer, who collects, he's a headmaster at a school, was a headmaster at a prep school in New Hampshire, Vermont, some hoity-toity place. And he used to collect student comments and such from their English paper, because he was also an English teacher, and compile them and make books about these comments. Anguished English, etc., about how ignorant, current students are and such. Well, he wrote another book called The Miracle of Language, and it's about kind of the English language and its growth and development. He has a chapter in there titled The Man of Fire New Words. And the chapter is entirely about Shakespeare. When I teach my history of the English language class, I usually read that chapter in its entirety. Okay? One of the comments he makes in there is that a student of his, when he'd taken a group of students to see Hamlet, complained afterwards that it was full of cliches. Okay? Because the student was unaware. So much of our language and so many of our phrases come from Shakespeare. Okay? And he mentions in that chapter, he has an entire page, the book's like this size. He has an entire page of quotes of Shakespeare all run together. And it's just one thing after another. I'll try and remember to bring it in. But you have, I am native here and to the manor born, more honored in the breach than in the custom. Richard Lederer. Lederer. Okay? And so he goes on and talks about what they are doing and the impression it gives to other countries and nations. Okay? And the ghost comes in. Hamlet. Angels and ministers of grace, defend us. Angels and ministers of grace. He's essentially saying angels and angels, because that's what angels are. They are ministers of grace. They are mere messengers of God. Defend us, protect us. Be thou a spirit of health or goblin damned. Bring with thee airs from heaven or blasts from hell. Be thy intents wicked or charitable. In other words, whether you are from heaven and sent by God, or you are from hell and sent by Lucifer, I will speak to thee. No matter what happens, Hamlet is saying, I will speak to you. Why? Who does he look like? It's his father. Okay? I'll call thee Hamlet, king, father, royal Dane. Answer me, let me not burst in ignorance, but tell why thy canonized bones, hearsed in death, canonized. He doesn't mean Hamlet Sr. is a saint. He means Hamlet Sr., one, was a Christian, and two, received Christian burial. Hearsed in death have burst their cerements. Why are you out? Why are you up from the grave? Why the sepulchre wherein we saw thee quietly inurned hath oped his ponderous and marble jaws to cast thee up again? How often is it that we see dead people walking? Not very often. Okay? Horatio mentioned, when did it happen at least once before? Just before the death of Julius Caesar. Did not importune or did not portend necessarily an auspicious or good thing at that point. What may this mean, that thou dead corpse, again in complete steel, meaning armed head to toe, Kappa P, as Hamlet's going to say later on, revisits thus the glimpses of the moon. Say, why is this? Wherefore? What should we do? And the ghost beckons to Hamlet. I really wish we had time, because I would bring in the DVD I have of Dress Rehearsal from 1964, I think it is, of Richard Burton. Richard Burton playing Hamlet. This was directed by John Gielgud. And John Gielgud does the part of Hamlet Sr. Okay. But it's worth watching just to see a young Richard Burton taking on Hamlet. I mean, one of the greatest Shakespearean interpreters that there was. My opinion, better than Olivier in many respects. Because Olivier's too fine and prissy. Okay? So, Horatio counsels Hamlet to do what?
Don't go with it.
Don't go with it. Why not?
It's a ghost. Don't go where
It's a ghost. Okay, why else? What if it is a damned ghost? Okay? Hamlet, so what? What should be the fear? I do not set my life at a pin's fee. In other words, I don't care whether I live or die. Where did we already see that? Oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. Okay? And for my soul, what can it do to that? Being a thing immortal as itself. In other words, the ghost can't touch my soul. Only God can do that. I'll follow it. What if it tempt you toward the flood? Get you to drown yourself. Little foreshadowing there. Or to the dreadful summit of the cliff. And there is it assumes some other horrible form that might deprive your sovereignty of reason and draw you into madness. Nice little foreshadowing there. Does the ghost deprive Hamlet of his reason and draw him into madness? How sane is it to contemplate suicide? Suicide goes against all reason. Suicide goes against all instinct. The number one instinct is, for all animals, self-preservation. Okay? Think of it. It wafts me still that it's signaling, come here. I'll follow. No, Marcellus says. Hamlet tells him, let go. Okay? Unhand me, gentlemen, by heaven, I'll make a ghost of him that lets me. Let means stalls, hinders me. Okay? So Hamlet goes off. And Marcellus says, something is rotten in the state of Denmark. So the ghost in Hamlet. Whither wilt thou lead me? Speak, I'll go no further. Mark me. Mark, take note. I will. My hour is almost come when I to sulphurous and tormenting flames must render up myself. Alas, poor ghost. Pity me not, but listen to what I shall unfold. Speak. So art thou, when Hamlet says, I'm bound to hear, so art thou to revenge. Now, haven't talked about it at all, but the 1590s were marked in Elizabethan drama by the revenge tragedy. Okay? You had the Spanish tragedy by Thomas Kidd. Okay? Jew of Malta by Marlowe. Okay? Titus Andronicus by Shakespeare. Early, very early. Okay? Is it opening tomorrow? I watched Coriolanus, by the way, Samuel, the other night with Ray Fiennes and Gerard Butler. And Ray Fiennes just steals everything. I mean, he is such a superb actor. And he plays Coriolanus. I mean, it has a pretty low rating on Netflix. It's available for free on Netflix. Has a pretty low rating, but it's worth the time to watch it just to see Ray Fiennes. Okay, I mean, he is truly superb. Okay, so revenge tragedy is popular in the 1590s. What characterizes revenge tragedy other than revenge? What are the characteristics of revenge tragedy? Anybody know? Death, okay. Kind of characteristic of tragedy usually. Ghosts. And in almost all of them, in revenge tragedy goes back to the 1st century Rome and Seneca. Okay? Ghosts who ask the living to revenge their deaths. Okay? In early revenge tragedy, Senecan revenge tragedy, those murders will occur off stage. Okay? Revenge tragedy in Shakespeare's day, it occurs on stage. The whole idea of the spectacle in ancient Greek and Roman tragedy, the spectacle was to occur off stage because it was thought to be too powerful, too emotionally suggestive for people to see it. Imagine what they would think of what we have available to our eyes. Yeah, I mean, they'd pull an Oedipus on us, and, you know. Okay, so a ghost appealing to someone to avenge their death, that's part and parcel of all revenge tragedy. So the ghost says, revenge. Hamlet, what? I am thy father's spirit. Was Hamlet sure that he was his father's spirit before? No. Looks like dad, but now the spirit says, I am your father. Doomed for a certain term to walk the night and for the day confined to fast in fires. till the foul crimes done in my days of nature are burnt and purged away. What is he talking about?
Well, he's being punished for what he's done.
Okay, where?
Purgatory.
Purgatory. Okay, this play dates from 1601. I think I said 1603. I think it's first written or first produced in 1601. Hold on. (1600–1601). It's first printed in the first quarto in 1603. Who is still alive in 1601?
Elizabeth?
Elizabeth. What characterizes Elizabeth's reign religiously? She's Protestant. She's very Protestant.
That idea of purgatory
Is it out the window? I was just watching. If you've not finished reading Michael Wood's book on Shakespeare, and even if you have, watch the video version, In Search of Shakespeare, available on YouTube. All four episodes. Okay, it's fantastic. I watched it over the last couple days. Even my kids were watching because they're like, "We've been there, kind of a thing." But the reason it's so fantastic is because I was telling Samuel this earlier. Wood is a historian, PhD Anglo-Saxon history from Oxford. He's not a literary critic, okay? And so he goes about examining Shakespeare's life from a historian's perspective, which means he's digging into the archives. And kind of one of the overarching themes of the series is how radical Shakespeare is in terms of his seeming, important word there, seeming adherence to the old religion. I don't mean his public adherence, but the impression you get through a lot of the plays. Here you have Hamlet's father talking about during the day he's being purged of sin for a time. Okay? And that sin will be purged away. That is nothing but the doctrine of purgatory. Okay? Which the 39 articles passed by Edward VI, reinforced by Elizabeth, okay, completely did away with. There is no purgatory in the Anglican Church. It's either hell or heaven. Okay? But then I am forbid to tell the secrets of my prison house. I could a tale unfold whose lightest word would harrow up thy soul. Freeze thy young blood, make thy two eyes like stars, start from their spheres, thy knotted and combined locks to part. Tells us Hamlet's hair is curly or wavy, and each particular hair to stand on end like quills upon the fretful porcupine. But this eternal blazon must not be to ears of flesh and blood. In other words, this eternal catalog of pain cannot be told to the living. So, listen, if you did ever love me, oh God, revenge is foul and most unnatural murder. Murder? Murder most foul is in the best it is, but this foul most strange and unnatural. Why is it strange and unnatural? Brother killing brother. Is that really strange and unnatural?
It tends to happen a lot.
What's the first murder? Brother killing brother. Okay? So, Hamlet says, "Oh, my prophetic soul." What does he mean? What's another way of putting that? I knew it! I knew it! Claudius killed, dead. Aye, that incestuous, that adulterate beast, with witchcraft of his wit, with traitorous gifts, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And so he moves on and he talks about how now that traitorous, adulterate beast, what? Through lewdness, so lust, though to a radiant angel leak, will sate itself in a celestial bed, etc. He smells the morning air and says, my time is short, I need to go on. Talks about how he was killed, poison poured in his ear and such. But then the ghost finishes his speech and says, line 86, now 85. Howsoever thou pursues this act, that is, this act of revenge, taint not thy mind, nor let thy soul nor let thy soul contrive to do what? Against thy mother ought. So he tells Hamlet two things. One, taint not thy mind. Two, don't touch your mother. Okay, so what does taint not your mind mean? What's taint?
Stain.
Don't stain it. Okay? Don't corrupt it. Don't color it. So if taint not your mind is what he's saying, then he's saying, keep your mind pure. What has his father told him to do? Revenge my death. How? How do you usually get revenge? I know President Obama said do it by voting. That's not how you get revenge. You kill somebody. How do you not taint your mind in plotting to kill somebody? How do you keep a clear head? You're thinking of taking somebody else's life. Okay? So, leave her to heaven, and to those thorns that in her bosom lodge to prick and sting her. Bye. Adieu, adieu. Okay? And so Hamlet gets a soliloquy. Everybody else is off the stage, which this is what, number 3 or 4? 1, 2. I've got these marked in all my different Shakespeare books. I need one book. So, all you host of heaven, O earth, what has he just done? Everybody up here in heaven, O earth, what else? And shall I couple hell? In other words, compound hell too. So, heaven, earth, hell. Fie. Hold my heart. What's he mean by that?
Steady there, don't get hit.
Yeah, steady there. Is it really don't get ahead of yourself?
Well, he knows he's as pissed off as he's coming to realize he's as pissed off as he has ever even begun to possibly imagine he could be.
Okay.
And he's really kind of trying to hold himself back if he can just a little bit.
Okay, trying to hold himself back. You're almost to what I want you to say, Blake.
It's almost like he's saying in the next few lines, like, I hope my heart can get through this. I hope it doesn't kill me in the process.
Yes! He's saying, hold it together, Hamlet. Don't fall apart now. Don't go completely bonkers. Don't lose it. Okay? And you, my sinews, grow not instant old, and bear me stiffly up. Remember thee? The poor ghost. Whilst memory holds a seat in this distracted globe. And Hamlet should point to his head, because that's what he's talking about. What has he just told us about his mind? This what kind of globe? It's distracted. What does that mean? It's not focused. If he's not focused, Where's his mind? Starting to wander. Like leave. That's what distracted means in the Elizabethan period. It means going mad. Okay? Remember thee, yea, from the table of my memory. Think, who was it who came up with the tabula rasa? Was it John Locke? Okay. The blank slate. From the table of my memory, what is he going to do? I'll wipe away all trivial, fond records. Fond, foolish. All saws of books, that is, all teachings, all things I've learned of books, all forms, all pressures past, meaning inscriptions, engravings that youth and observation copied there. And thy commandment all alone shall live within the book and volume of my brain. What did dear old dad tell him not to do? Taint not your mind. You know, taint means like when you're mixing paint. You drop a tincture of a color into another color. Like a tincture of blue into white to lighten it. What has he just done? He's not dropped a drop of blue.
He's poured in there.
Yeah, he's completely switched it. He's not tainted his mind. He's filled his mind with one idea. Revenge. Okay? Now, where does revenge fit within the Christian tradition?
Doesn't.
It doesn't. Thank you. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. It's not up to you to do. I'll take care of the vengeance, God says. Yeah, I got this. Okay? In the Christian tradition, what is one supposed to do towards one's enemies?
Turn the other cheek.
Love them. Doesn't really fit. Okay? So, he says, within the book of your commandment shall live alone within the book and volume of my brain, unmixed with baser matter. And he's talking there about unmixing it with the base, like the mixing of paint. You have a color, a tint that you mix with the base. No. Villain, villain, smiling, dimmed villain. My table's meat it is, I set it down that one may smile and be a villain. At least I am sure it may be so in Denmark. Okay. Horatio Marcellus come in. Hamlet talks to them. He tells them somewhat about the ghost. And Hamlet swears by St. Patrick and tells them, line 143, touching this vision here, it is an honest ghost. Okay, now notice, here in Act 1, he's convinced. Ghost is telling us the truth. For your desire to know what's between us, over-master it as you may. In other words, don't ask, I'm not going to tell you. Okay? Ghost comes in. Hamlet makes them swear not to tell anybody about the ghost. And the ghost says, swear, Hamlet makes him swear here, swear there, swear here, swear on his sword. Keep in mind, what's the shape of his sword?
Cross.
It's a cross. Okay? So, then Hamlet says, when Horatio comments, oh, day and night, but this is wondrous strange, line 173, Hamlet, therefore as a stranger give it welcome. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Well, what does he mean by that? And what does Horatio mean when he says this is wondrous strange? It's his Shakespearean way of saying, I can't believe this. I find it incredible. Keep in mind, literal meaning incredible. Not creditable, not believable. Okay? And that's why Hamlet says there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio. Horatio's a Stoic. What do the Stoics say about, for example, life after death? There isn't any. It's just here. That's it. And Hamlet is saying, Horatio, open your eyes. There's a lot more to the world than you imagine. And then he says, now, if I should, from this point on, if I perchance hereafter shall think meet to put an antic disposition on, that you at such times you see me, don't wink, don't nod, don't go, psh, Hamlet's playing, pretending to be mad. Don't give anything out, he says. Swear, they swear. Okay? And then he finishes and says, the time is out of joint. Oh, cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right. What's he mean? The time was out of joint, or the time is out of joint.
It's like the Titanic and that issue, like it's been knocked off of its regular course of things because of his issue.
Exactly. It's the whole great chain of being issue all over again. Time, just as humans have a chain of relationship and animals have a chain of relationship, and politics even has chain of relationship, president, vice president, speaker of the house, all the way down to us peons. Okay? So, time exists like this. Eons, millennia, hundreds of years, decades of years, individual years, months, weeks, days, hours, seconds. And what has happened? The chain is broken. And Hamlet is saying, I was born to fix this. Okay, anytime someone is born to fix that problem, what do they become?
The sacrifice.
The sacrifice. The finger in the hole in the dike, stopping the flood. Okay? That's what Hamlet means. Oh, cursed spite that ever I was born to set it right. Okay? Act 2, Scene 1. We're going to skip the first part. Polonius is sending Reynaldo off to Paris to do what? Nope, not bring him back. It's one of the themes that I put on the first day when we were talking about Hamlet.
We did it scene 2 or scene
Scene 1. It's still Act 2, Scene 1. I'm just glossing over to spy on him. What does this tell us about Polonius and his son? He doesn't trust them. Okay? So we have somebody being observed. Observing people is a major issue throughout this play. So then Ophelia comes in. And her face looks startled. How now, Ophelia? What's the matter? Line, whatever it is, 75 or so. Oh, my lord, I've been so frightened. What? In the name of God. As I was sewing in my closet, Lord Hamlet, with his doublet all unbraced, no hat upon his head, his stockings fouled, ungartered, and down jived to his ankle. What has she just described? I've talked about this image before. The lovesick lover. He's completely mad he has forgotten to dress properly. His doublet is untied. His hose have dropped down to his ankle, so his bare leg is showing. I'm sorry, cover your ears, ladies. Okay? Pale as his shirt. That is, his face is pale as his shirt. His knees knocking together, and with look so piteous and purport, as if he had been loosed out of hell, he comes before me. Mad for thy love? I do not know. She never knows anything. All she can do is describe. Okay? Well, what said he? And she says, he took me by the wrist and held my hand. So what happens? He grabs Ophelia by the wrist and he does this. You know, okay? I mean, that's exactly what she describes. And with his other hand thus over his brow, he falls to such perusal of my face as it would draw it. As if he's going to take her face and draw it. He's looking at her that carefully. Long steady so at last, a little shaking mine arm, thrice his head thus waving up and down. He sighed piteously. He lets me go. He turns over his shoulder. He looks at his way, you know. Polonius, we got to go talk to the king. This is bad. This is really bad. Well, what did Polonius previously tell Ophelia to do?
Don't talk to him.
Don't talk to Hamlet. Okay? He says this is the very ecstasy of love. Okay? Have you given him any words of it late? That is, did you disobey me? No, my lord. I did as you did command. Polonius, that's it. That's made him mad. Okay, keep in mind, mad means angry. Excuse me, mad means crazy, not angry. Out of his mind. How do we know that? Well, because Polonius is going to tell us a little later, I was the exact same way when I was in my youth. Okay? So, Act 2, Scene 2, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come in, and the king addresses them, and he tells them, yeah, something's wrong with Hamlet. I want you guys to go talk to him. And the queen addresses them also. Okay? Notice the pronoun usage. King and queen talking to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. They say you, etc. Rosencrantz, both your majesties, your dread, etc. They're using you back and forth. I just want to point that out. And Polonius comes in, and the ambassadors from Norway and such, and we're going to skip the ambassadors. Okay? And Voltimand leaves, and Polonius says this famous speech. My liege and madam, to expostulate, this is line 86, to expostulate what majesty should be, what duty is, why day is day, night, night, and time is time, were nothing but to waste night, day, and time. Therefore, since brevity is the soul of wit, cliche, and tediousness the limbs and outward flourishes, I will be brief. Your noble son is mad. Mad call I it, for to define true madness, what is it but to be nothing else but mad? The queen, more matter, less art. What does she mean, more matter?
Less fluff, more meaning.
More substance, more meat, less rhetoric.
Like stop being flowery.
Yeah.
Language, just
Quit beating around the bush and get to the point. Okay? Or as I tell my writing students, be specific, be exact, be clear. Okay? He says, I use no art at all. That he's mad, 'tis true. 'Tis true, 'tis pity. And pity, 'tis true. A foolish figure. What does all this tell us about Polonius?
he likes to move something.
He likes his own voice. Okay? So, he reads from the letter Ophelia has given him that she received from Hamlet. And the queen asks, came this from Hamlet to her? And he says, oh, hold on, let me finish reading. Okay. King, how hath she received his love? King wants to know, what did Ophelia do in reply to Hamlet's entreaties of love? Look at Polonius' reply. What do you think of me? As of a man faithful and honorable. And that, I think, is how the king's reply ought to be. He's kind of like, what? Oh, well, you're faithful and honorable. He's kind of saying it, as it's obvious. He's not belting it out. Well, I would fain prove so. But what might you think when I'd seen this hot love on the wing, as I perceived it? And he goes on to say, what would you think if I saw this love and I didn't do anything to stop it? Okay? He says, so I gave her prescripts. I told her not to listen to Hamlet. Okay? And therefore, Hamlet is mad. King to the queen. You think so? Could be. Polonius. He's listening to them talk to each other, and he's like, what? Hath there ever been such a time that I have positively said 'tis so when it proved otherwise? This is like, think David Axelrod, one of Obama's chief gurus, talking to Obama saying, have I ever been wrong? Please, tell me. King, not that I know. Well, then take this from this if circumstances lead me. If this be otherwise. In other words, take my head from my body if I am wrong. What's that an example of? It is foreshadowing of a sort. It's not the king that's going to take his head from his body. But is he wrong? Yes. He's entirely wrong. Is he wrong that Hamlet is in love with Ophelia? No. Hamlet is in love with Ophelia. Where do we see that proven? Act 5. When Hamlet jumps in her grave. Okay? So, Polonius. You know how Hamlet sometimes walks in the lobby here for hours? Yeah. At such a time, I'll loose my daughter to him. What kind of language is that? What do you loose on others?
Arrows.
Dogs!
Yeah.
You loose the dogs on the foxes or on the rabbits to begin the hunt. So he's going to loose his daughter onto Hamlet. Be you and I behind an arras then. Okay? Think of that Elizabethan stage. Here's the globe. Okay, it's 40-some feet wide, 20, I think it's like 24 feet this way, and it's like 47 feet this way. You have an arras here. Okay? He says, be you and I behind the arras. Now, is the arras on the stage? It's an interesting question. It's at the back of the stage. Here's the tiring house. You'll have your gallery for the balcony scenes up here, up above. Okay? And there's usually a door here and a door here. The arras doesn't cover the doors necessarily. Okay? This is all important. So, let us be behind an arras, etc. Hamlet comes in reading a book. And Polonius goes, oh, look, here he comes. Go away. And he says, what will he do? He says, I'll board him presently. What kind of language is that?
Like get on a ship, right?
Kind of like that. Okay. What else is it? If you have two ships getting ready to fight, let's say they've already engaged in gunfire, the cannons have fired, and they've now drifted close enough. You board another ship by throwing a plank that has big spikes at the end and landing it down onto the deck rail of the other ship so you can go across. Okay? What he's saying is, I will accost him. So, Polonius addresses Hamlet. How does my good Lord Hamlet? Well, God of mercy. Do you know me, my lord? Excellent, well, you're a fishmonger. What does your gloss tell you a fishmonger is?
Fishmonger?
Is it just a fishmonger?
Fish merchant.
Fish merchant. It's more than that, though. A fishmonger is also, in Elizabethan parlance,
Pimp?
a pimp. A procurer of flesh. Not I, my lord. He doesn't want to be either of these things. He doesn't want to be a seller of fish or a pimp. Hamlet, then I would you were so honest a man. What does Hamlet mean? I wish you were so honest a man. Do you go to a fish merchant to purchase cat food?
No, there you go.
Do you go to a fish merchant to purchase steak? No, you go to a fish merchant to purchase fish. Therefore, a fish merchant is an honest individual. Similarly, using the other meaning, do you go to a fishmonger to purchase eggs? No, you go to a fishmonger, a pimp, to secure a girl or boy, depending upon your tastes. That's why Hamlet says, I wish you were so honest a man. Everybody knows if they're going to a pimp, what they're going to the pimp for. They're not going to the pimp to open a bank account. Honest, my lord? Aye, to be honest as this world goes, is to be one man picked out of 10,000. In other words, only 1 in 10,000 are honest. Well, that's true. For if the sun breed maggots in a dead dog, being a good kissing carrion, playing on this Renaissance belief that, you go by roadkill and you see a dead dog one day and there's nothing on it, and you go back the next day and it's all rotted out and there's maggots crawling all over it. Well, how did the maggots get there? It was a Renaissance belief that the sun impregnated that carcass with maggot eggs or whatever, okay, and made the carcass produce the eggs or produce the maggots. So, if the sun breed maggots in a dead dog, being a good kissing carrion, have you a daughter? Why does he bring up he has a daughter? I have, my lord. Polonius is like, okay, where's he going with this? Let her not walk in the sun. Why? Well, if the sun can breed maggots in a dead dog, what might it do to your daughter? Conception is a blessing. But as your daughter may conceive, my friend, look to it. Now, conception is a blessing. Children are from God, the psalmist says. Well, what else is Hamlet saying? Children, offspring, he's equating with maggots. Children becoming what? Adults. In other words, humanity are maggots. Polonius. This is an aside. The audience hears this. Hamlet does not. Still harping on my daughter, but he knew me not at first. Said I was a fishmonger. He's far gone. And truly, in my youth, I suffered much extremity for love. Very near this. Tells us more about Polonius than we probably wish we knew. Okay? What do you read, my lord? Words, words, words. What kind of answer is that?
Vague.
Okay, you could say it's vague. It's also very astute, isn't it? What do you usually read? Words. Okay. You could take this as being extremely sarcastic. What is the matter, my lord? Meaning, what is the matter, the essence, the substance of the words? Hamlet, however, takes what is the matter in its popular usage. Well, what's the matter? Between who? I mean the matter that you read. Oh, this. Slanders. For the satirical rogue says here that old men have gray beards. Is that satirical? No. That their faces are wrinkled? True. Their eyes purging thick amber and plum tree gum? It's really disgusting, but true. And that they have a plentiful lack of wit, together with most weak hams, that is, legs. All which, sir, though I most powerfully and potently believe, I hold it not honesty to have it not set down. In other words, it's all true, but you shouldn't be writing about it. For yourself, sir, shall grow old as I am, if, like a crab, you could go backward. What? How shall he grow as old as Hamlet, if, like a crab, he could go backward?
Time could reverse itself.
He'd be old, because Hamlet is calling himself old. By the way, well, I'll ask this later. Polonius, to the audience again. Though this be madness, yet there is a method in it. Meaning there is a structure to it. Do mad, completely crazy, off their rocker people speak with this kind of architectural structure to their words? No, not at all. Okay? Will you walk out of the air, my Lord? Meaning, he's saying, will you come with me outside the room and go walk on the balcony outside? Out on the veranda, as it were? Hamlet, into my grave. Well, that's out of the air, all right. Because that's into the ground. How pregnant sometimes his replies are. A happiness that often madness hits on, which reason and sanity could not so prosperously be delivered of. I'll leave him and contrive the means of meeting between him and my daughter. Really? If Hamlet is really crazy, do you really want to put your daughter into any kind of proximity to him? Okay. I take humbly my leave of you, my lord. You cannot, sir, take from me anything that I will more willingly part withal. That's Hamlet's very subtle way of saying, you can't take your leave from me because I don't want you here to begin with. Accept my life, accept my life, accept my life. Now, is Hamlet putting on an antic disposition? Has he told Horatio and the others that he might? Or is he really being honest here? This is, one of the age-old questions. Is Hamlet really mad? So, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come in. A couple of his college buddies. And no, we're not even going to get close to finishing this today. So, he asked them, how are you doing? Okay. As the indifferent children of the earth. Indifferent. Uncaring. Guildenstern, happy in that we're not happy. On Fortune's cap, we're not the very button. Fortune, the goddess, okay. I'll put her in her dress because I'm sexist. He says, we're not up here on Fortune's cap. Keep in mind, Fortune's also a wheel. So we're not at the top of Fortune. Everything isn't going wonderfully for them. Nor the soles of her shoe. In other words, you're not down here. Life doesn't just, suck totally. Neither, my lord. Then you live about her waist. Then in the middle of her favors. Faith, her privates we. Meaning, yeah, we live around her privates. Okay? In the secret parts of Fortune. Oh, most true. She is a strumpet. Now, when Hamlet says that, he means that two different ways. There's a general meaning and there's a more particular meaning. What's the general meaning? That Fortune is a strumpet or a slut.
Fickle.
Fickle. Like sluttish time, she'll sleep with anyone. Okay? How else does he mean it, though? She's letting you two around her privates? She must be a slut. Okay. This is a slam particularly directed at Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Okay? So Hamlet asks, what news? And they say none, but the world's grown honest. Then is doomsday near. If the world's grown honest, it must be the end of time. He goes, no, that's not true. Why are you here? Did Fortune send you to this prison? Prison? Aye, Denmark's a prison. Then is the world one, a goodly one, in which there are many confines, wards, and dungeons. Denmark being one of the worst. What's Hamlet talking about? Why is he saying the world's a prison? Is this just part of his antic disposition that he's play acting crazy? Or is Shakespeare possibly raising some pretty deep theological, spiritual, existential issues? Okay? We think not so. Why then 'tis none to you. For there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Those of you unfortunate enough to be in the 3010 class that I started teaching in October, we started yesterday the tragical history of Dr. Faustus. Okay? And at the beginning, somewhat towards the beginning of the play, Faustus is talking with Mephistopheles. And Mephistopheles tells him, when Hamlet asked, where's hell? Mephistopheles says, hell is wherever we are. Okay? He says, to have known the experience of being in God's presence and to be away from that, that is to be hell. That is to be in hell. So wherever I am, he says, is hell. Later, Faustus signs his soul away to Lucifer. Signs it in blood, the whole 9 yards. And then he asks, tell me more about hell. I think it's a myth. I don't think it's real. And Mephistopheles says, go ahead. You think that. 24 more years you have to think that. And then you will experience it. Okay? What Marlowe was getting at in that play, and what Shakespeare is getting at here, is that our attitudes determine much of what we experience. And I said to the class yesterday, there is a large group of thought in Christendom, in the Christian church, that argues hell is entirely, or heaven, is entirely dependent upon your attitude. In other words, to be in the presence of God, for those who want to be in the presence of God, that's heaven. To be in the presence of God, for those who don't want to be in the presence of God, that's hell. Notice, they're in the same locale. It's all in the presence of God. Period.
That's pretty close to Sartre's conception of hell.
Yeah.
Which is hell is being stuck in a room with people you can't stand.
But, yeah, I'm with old John Paul, on that one. Okay? So, why then 'tis none to you, for there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To me, it's a prison. Why is Denmark a prison to Hamlet?
He's locked into it. Like he can't do anything.
He's bound by his own.
He's powerless. He should be what? King at this point. Why then your ambition makes it one. That's a good reply. Oh yeah, Hamlet, we see the problem. You want to be more than what you are. Denmark is too narrow for your mind. Hamlet, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space, were it not that I have bad dreams. What does he mean? Take the strumpet out of there. I'll just redraw that.
Take this.
So that now you have, let's say, a walnut. And what does Hamlet say? You could put me in here, and I could be a king of infinite space. Obviously, is it infinite if it's bounded by a shell? No. He is saying, however, my experience of it would be that this is an infinite space. Were it not for what? Bad dreams. Why would bad dreams take away the thought that this was an infinite space?
Cramps your mind and clouds it. So it's
Okay.
suffocating.
Where do the dreams come from? Okay. We know they come from within. Did Shakespeare necessarily? Did the Elizabethans?
Oh no.
They come from outside. If they come from outside, then what does that mean? That this space isn't infinite. Okay? Notice the emphasis here what he says about dreams, and then later on in the to be or not to be speech. And he's also talking about dreams. I think that tells us in both these speeches, okay, and I'm going to make the assertion that to be or not to be is not a soliloquy. It is not Hamlet telling us truly what he believes. As we'll see in a moment, for one very simple reason. He's not alone on the stage. Okay? But the very fact that he does bring up dreams more than once and in different contexts does kind of suggest maybe Hamlet does have some dream issues. Okay? Which dreams indeed are ambition, the two say. Airy and light equality that it is but a shadow's shadow. And we're almost like we're back there at Midsummer Night's Dream. Ambition is a shadow's shadow. Well, first of all, what is a shadow? It is an unreality. So what's a shadow's shadow? It's a copy of an unreality. It's an unreal unreality. It's an image of an image, neither of which are true. Hamlet. Then are our beggars bodies, and our monarchs and outstretched heroes the beggars' shadows. That is, beggars are the real thing, and monarchs and outstretched heroes are the shadows of the beggars. Shall we go to court? And they say yes. So they keep talking, and Hamlet says, no, I know why you guys are here. My mother sent for you, because I have not been myself lately. And he goes on and gives us this great speech. 296. I have of late, I've lost all my mirth, forgone all custom of exercises, meaning he has stopped exercising, he has stopped his sword practice. And indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory. This most excellent canopy, the air. What? Look you, this brave overhanging firmament, this majestical roof fretted with gold and fire, why it appeareth nothing to me but a foul and pestilent congregation of vapors. A congregation of vapors? What happens to vapor? It dissipates. What a piece of work is man. How noble in reason. Notice the first faculty he addresses, reason. How infinite in faculties. In form and moving, how express and admirable. In action, how like an angel. In apprehension, how like a god. Why? Because we can think of things, what? That aren't there. So in apprehension, in imagination, we're like God. Imagining forth, bodying forth, Theseus says, things that do not exist. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals, and yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? What is man ultimately? Dust. Just dust. How important is this to Hamlet? Jump to Act 5 and look at the gravedigger scene. When he's talking with the gravediggers and they throw up Yorick's skull and he holds Yorick's skull and he talks about Yorick and how the mud that is used to make a stopper for a bunghole in a cask of beer could be Alexander the Great or Caesar or any one of us. This is what we become. Food for worms. Period. Okay? Man delights not me. No, nor woman either. And over here thinking, okay, so you go that way, that's fine. He goes, no, it's not that. Okay? So, Hamlet goes on. The boy, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern talk about the players. And then Hamlet runs into Polonius, and Polonius talks about the players. And Hamlet talks to the first player, and the first player does a speech of Pyramus. Big, long speech. He's got tears running down his face. Does a speech of Priam. Okay? And Hamlet asks the player, can you do a play for me? And if I added a few lines, can you add that to it? And he goes, yeah, sure, fine. Okay? So they all leave. Hamlet gets another soliloquy. Bottom of page 1117, or this is still Act 2, Scene 2, about line 545 or so. What a rogue and peasant slave am I. Why? Why does he think he is a peasant slave? What can the player do that Hamlet hasn't done? He says, look at this player. He, in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit that from her working all his visage waned, tears in his eyes. And yet, what is Hecuba to him, meaning him, the actor? She's nothing. And yet he puts on a great show. He says, whereas I, line 567, a dull and muddy mettled rascal, peak like John of Dreams, unpregnant of my cause, and can say nothing. What is troubling Hamlet so far, or in this speech? Clock's ticking, and he's not acted. He's not done anything. He's not exacted the revenge yet. Who does me this, he says, 575. It cannot be, but I'm pigeon-livered and lack gall to make oppression bitter. Or ere this, I should have fatted all the region kites, but this slave's awful, meaning Claudius's guts. Bloody, bawdy villain. What an ass am I, the son of a dear father murdered, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell. Is that true? Is he prompted by heaven? No! Heaven never prompts to revenge. Must like a whore unpack my heart with words and fall a cursing like a very drab, a scullion. No. He says, I have reason to act, and yet he doesn't. So, he says, 595, I'll have these players play something like the murder of my father before mine uncle. I'll observe his looks. I'll tint him to the quick. If it do blench, I know my chorus. What's he telling us? Why hasn't he acted? He's not convinced. He's not sure. If they do this action, this play, and the king starts when he sees the other king killed, then I'll know he's guilty. The spirit that I have seen may be the devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape. Yea, and perhaps out of my weakness and my melancholy, as he's very potent with such spirits, he abuses me to damn me. I'll have grounds more relative than this. And he's punning there on that word relative. In other words, I'll have reason as well. Okay? The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. We'll stop there and we'll pick up with Act 3, Scene 1. We'll just end up dropping something later, I guess. I don't know what.